Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
Have you ever felt the sting of silence from someone you once trusted? What if their distance isn't rejection, but redirection? Could the people walking away from your life be part of a divine answer to your own prayers? There are moments in life when someone you deeply care about, someone you thought would always be by your side, begins to drift away. They stop replying to your messages. Your calls go unanswered. Conversations grow cold. And slowly, their silence begins to speak louder than any words ever could. You sit there wondering, what did I do wrong? You replay conversations in your mind, searching for clues, for signs, for something you could have done differently. You try to fix what you didn't even realize was broken. But let me share something powerful with you. Sometimes it's not about your mistakes. It's not about your flaws, your shortcomings, or even something you fail to see. Sometimes it's about what God is doing behind the scenes. We pray for guidance, clarity, purpose, and the right people to come into our lives. But what if God's response to those prayers isn't addition, but subtraction? What if He removes before He replaces? Some people are meant to be part of your journey, but not the entire story. They're placed in your life for a reason, maybe even a season, but not necessarily the whole ride. And when we try to hold on longer than we should, when we cling to relationships that were only ever meant to be temporary, their presence can begin to weigh us down. So out of love, God begins to gently remove what we weren't strong enough to release ourselves. He allows space. He allows silence, not as punishment, but as protection. At first, it may feel like abandonment. It may sting like betrayal. But what if it's really divine preservation? Because not everyone who starts with you is meant to finish with you. Some people were only meant to introduce you to a chapter, not walk with you through every page. And if you try to bring everyone with you into the place where God is taking you, you might find yourself drained, distracted, and spiritually discouraged. God understands the weight some people carry in your life, the emotional pull, the distractions, the spiritual drag. He knows that their presence, even if well-meaning, could slow your journey. So, in His wisdom, He clears the path, even when it hurts, even when it leaves you wondering why. Sometimes, the pain of letting go is exactly what prepares you for the victory ahead. The Bible gives us a powerful example in the story of Gideon. As he prepared to enter battle, Gideon gathered thousands of men. To him, it made sense. Strength comes in numbers, right? But God had a different plan. He kept reducing Gideon's army, narrowing it down until only a few remained. Not because the others were weak or disloyal, but because God didn't want the outcome to be confused. The victory wouldn't come from manpower. It would come from obedience. Imagine standing on the edge of battle and hearing God say, "You have too many men." That's not what anyone wants to hear before a fight. We tend to believe that more people, more support, more affirmation means more strength. But God sees what we cannot. He knew that with fewer people, there'd be no mistaking where the glory belonged. And maybe that's exactly what's happening in your life. When people walk away, when a relationship ends, when someone you counted on goes silent, it might not be abandonment. It might be divine subtraction. God could be removing the extra, trimming the noise, making sure that when your breakthrough comes, you'll know with complete certainty it was Him who brought you through. Maybe someone walked out on you. Maybe they promised to stay and didn't. Maybe they disappeared without explanation or goodbye. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel the sting of silence. But don't let that absence speak lies about your value. Their leaving doesn't mean you're less. In fact, it may be the very door God is closing to create room for something greater, something sacred. Let it hurt if it must, but don't let it stop your purpose. Let it shape you, not define you. We often ask God for blessings. We pray for breakthroughs, for growth, for divine favor. But when those blessings show up as subtraction rather than addition, we become confused. We start questioning if we did something wrong. But maybe it's not punishment, it's preparation. Maybe God isn't taking something away from you. Maybe He's clearing the space for something greater. He's not just making you stronger. He's teaching you to walk by faith instead of by comfort. He's asking you to lean on what is eternal, not what feels familiar. And in that stretching, in that letting go, something powerful begins to happen. You mature. You grow wiser. You begin to trust not in what you can see, but in who you know God to be. Pruning is rarely pleasant. It stings. It confuses. But every gardener knows pruning precedes fruitfulness. And God, the master gardener, never cuts without purpose. If someone walked away from you, it didn't catch him off guard. He saw it before it happened. He allowed it, not to hurt you, but to position you. He's already prepared the next step, the next door, the next chapter. So don't waste your energy chasing those who chose to leave what God is still building in you. If they were meant to stay, they would have remained. And if they left, it means your destiny doesn't depend on them. You are not abandoned. You are not invisible. You are being set apart, molded for something greater than you can currently see. God is rearranging your surroundings so that He can refill your spirit with clarity, with peace, and with renewed power. Let the silence guide you toward His voice. Let the loneliness push you deeper into His presence. He's never left your side. And if God is for you, who can truly stand against you? There's a unique kind of ache in silence, the kind that cuts deeper than any argument or confrontation ever could. When someone who once stood by you, laughed with you, cheered for you, suddenly goes quiet, it can feel like the absence speaks louder than any explanation. You find yourself replaying old conversations, trying to fill in the blanks, wondering what changed. But here's the truth you must hold on to. Silence, though hard to interpret, often reveals what words try to hide. When someone withdraws without reason, when they stop showing up, when their presence becomes a void, don't let their silence shake your identity. Their quietness may be speaking the truth they were never brave enough to say aloud. That silence, though painful, speaks volumes. It often tells a deeper story than the smiles they once shared or the promises they once made. Because let's be honest, not everyone has the courage to say what they really feel. Some people run from confrontation. Others run from guilt. And many hide simply because they don't want you to see their insecurities. So instead of saying, "I'm jealous," or "Your growth makes me uncomfortable," or "I'm not capable of walking where you're going," they choose silence. They slowly disappear, hoping their absence will go unnoticed or unchallenged. But here's the thing, silence is never neutral. It eventually becomes its own kind of answer. And sometimes, God uses that very silence to reveal the true condition of the heart. Not just theirs, but yours as well. Because how you respond when you're ignored reveals something powerful about your character. It teaches you how to carry disappointment without bitterness. It shows you how to walk in grace, even when you feel rejected. And most importantly, it reminds you of this truth. The approval of people was never the foundation of your worth. So when their voices fall silent, that's your invitation to tune in to a deeper voice. The voice of the one who never leaves, never turns his face, never stops speaking love and purpose over your life. There's a sacred moment in the story of Jesus that speaks directly to this. At the Last Supper, he sat at a table with men he had poured his heart into. He broke bread with those he had served, taught, and walked beside. Yet one of them would betray him. Another would deny knowing him. And many would vanish into the shadows when things got hard. Jesus felt the sting of silence, the ache of being left behind. He knew what it meant to be abandoned by the ones he trusted. And yet, he didn't let it stop him. Even in the silence, even in the heartbreak, he continued toward the cross. He didn't let betrayal change his mission. He didn't allow rejection to rewrite his calling. And you must do the same. Some people were only assigned to your comfort, not your calling. They could celebrate you in safety, but they couldn't stand beside you in sacrifice. That's why their silence doesn't disqualify you. It simply reveals who was never meant to carry the weight of your purpose. They're often right beside you when you're struggling, when life has humbled you, when your light seems dim. That's when they feel comfortable, secure in the idea that you pose no threat to their pride or position. But the moment you start to rise, the moment your light shines just a bit brighter, something shifts. Their own insecurities wake up, and instead of clapping for you, they begin to pull away. It stings, but their silence reveals a truth their applause never could. It says, "I was never truly with you the way you thought I was." And that truth can be painful. You might feel the urge to chase after them, to beg for an explanation, to ask them to return and tell you what went wrong. But listen, child of God, don't do that. Don't waste your energy trying to convince someone to stay who is never truly aligned with your purpose in the first place. When someone's silence speaks, listen closely, but don't let it define you. Don't let it rattle your confidence or shake your peace. Their silence may hurt, yes, but it also helps. It shows you who is meant to walk beside you and who is only ever meant to walk by for a moment. It distinguishes the authentic from the convenient, the loyal from the seasonal. Sometimes we resist the message silence brings because it feels too final. But even in that aching pause, God is working. He uses the absence, the void, the quiet moments to mature you, to detach you from the noise of the world and draw you closer to the sound of his still, small voice. Isn't it something how silence can speak more clearly than any crowd ever could? Because what God has planned for your life doesn't hinge on who stays or who leaves. What he planted in you doesn't need popular support to flourish. In fact, there are seasons where the silence grows so loud, it pushes you to your knees. To seek deeper, to pray harder, to depend not on human voices, but on the truth God already declared over your life. And in that quiet space, something powerful happens. You discover your true strength. You realize that peace doesn't come from who stays. It comes from the one who sustains. That's God. Always God. So the next time someone pulls away and silence settles in, don't take it as rejection. Take it as revelation. Not all loss is loss. Some departures are divine deliverance. Some quiet exits aren't personal. They're protection. When someone drifts away without a word, it doesn't always mean you failed. Sometimes it's simply their truth revealing itself. Their silence unmasks the reality they never had the courage to speak aloud. And often, the most merciful thing God can do for you is to let the mask fall, to allow the noise to fade, and to let silence speak. Because it's in that quiet space that something deeper becomes clear, something that resonates with eternity. Life, in its unpredictable rhythm, can shift in a heartbeat. One day, everything feels solid. The people in your life feel close. The conversations flow freely, and you feel secure in your place. Then, almost without warning, something changes. The phone grows quiet. The invites stop coming. Those you counted on begin to drift, and it cuts deep. It feels like rejection, like you've been silently erased from a life you once shared. You sit there, staring at the absence, wondering if you missed a sign. It feels unfair. But here's something I've learned over and over again. What feels like rejection is often God's redirection. And yes, that truth is hard to accept when the wound is fresh, when you're surrounded by memories that no longer match your current reality. But that's when faith must rise. Faith reminds us that our lives aren't falling apart. They're being reordered, not by chance, but by a loving Father who sees far beyond what we can comprehend. We're so quick to assume blame when people walk away. We retrace every step, every word, wondering what we could have done differently. And yes, there are moments when self-reflection is necessary. Growth comes through owning our part. But far more often than we realize, people leave not because you did something wrong, but because God is clearing space. He's making room for something greater, something healthier, something more aligned with his purpose for your life. And yet, we cry over those who were never meant to stay. We chase after doors that were only meant to close. We mourn what was, instead of preparing for what will be. Still, in his kindness, God uses that very discomfort, that aching sting of rejection, to steer us back to the path he intended for us all along. And when you begin to see it that way, the silence no longer feels like loss. It feels like grace. Think of Jonah for a moment. God gave him a clear instruction, go to Nineveh, but Jonah had other ideas. He ran the opposite way and ended up inside the belly of a great fish. It was dark, confining, and nothing like what he planned. But strangely, it was exactly where God needed him to be. That tight, isolated place became the space where Jonah's heart was realigned with God's will. He felt trapped, but in truth, he was being redirected. Sometimes rejection feels just like that fish. It's dark, it's lonely, it's confusing, but it's not your final stop. It's a pivot point. God uses it to turn you around, to bring you back to the path that leads to your purpose. Take the Israelites, for example. God led them out of Egypt, out of slavery. But when the journey through the wilderness got tough, their memories started playing tricks on them. They began to long for Egypt, the very place that had once oppressed them. Isn't that exactly what we do sometimes? We crave the comfort of what we once knew, even if it was harming us. We miss relationships that drained us, jobs that stifled us, friendships that turned toxic. We ask God to restore what he deliberately removed. But here's the truth. God won't move you forward while your heart is still anchored to the past. Rejection, in many ways, is the key that breaks those chains. It's what God often uses to push us into freedom. Sometimes the people who walk away from you are actually fulfilling a divine assignment without even knowing it. They say no to you, but God is whispering yes to a higher plan, a better outcome, a more aligned future. And yes, it doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always feel good, but that doesn't mean it's not right. Because sometimes the pain of rejection is the very thing that opens the door to your real calling. But faith isn't rooted in how we feel. It's anchored in what we believe. Faith chooses to trust even when nothing makes sense. Faith says, if God allowed this, then there must be a reason. I may not see it yet, but I believe in the one who wrote the plan. Maybe you didn't expect the silence. Maybe you didn't see the distance coming. Maybe the conversation ended too soon, or the connection faded without warning, and you're left wondering what happened. But here's what you need to remember. God's plan for your life is never at the mercy of someone else's choices. What he begins, he is faithful to complete, with or without the ones who left. Their departure doesn't dismantle your destiny. If anything, it removes the distractions so you can focus more clearly on your assignment. Don't waste your energy trying to resurrect what God has already released. Don't try to build your future around people who were never meant to be in it. Trust that when others walk out, God remains. And more than that, he leads. He leads with intention, with wisdom, with a love that sees every step ahead before you even take it. Yes, it hurts when someone turns their back. Yes, it stings when your value is no longer seen by someone you once trusted. But sometimes that pain is exactly what wakes you up to your true identity in Christ. It's the heartbreak that brings you back to your knees. It's the silence that finally clears the noise so you can hear God's whisper again. Sometimes when people begin to pull away, it's not a reflection of your failure. It's a sign of your transformation. You're not being pushed away because something's wrong with you. Often, you're being separated because you've grown. And real, deep, spiritual growth has a way of making others uncomfortable, especially those who prefer to stay the same. The closer you walk with God, the more your light begins to shine. And not everyone can handle that brightness. When your values begin to shift, it reveals what others have been trying to hide. When your priorities begin to shift, when your hunger for truth becomes greater than your desire to blend in, you won't even need to explain yourself. Your life will begin to speak on its own. You'll stop laughing at the same jokes that once entertained you. You won't feel at home in the same places anymore. And those surface-level conversations that once filled your time, they no longer hold the same weight. That quiet transformation, that inner shift begins to shine a light on everything that was once hidden behind the comfort of routine. It peels back the layers and reveals what was really there all along. Because spiritual growth, real growth, naturally creates space. It doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It doesn't mean you place yourself above anyone else. But it does mean you're moving forward and not everyone is ready or willing to come with you. Instead of growing alongside you, some people will pull back. Others might simply observe from the sidelines, unsure how to handle what they see. It's not that you push them away. Often, It's because your growth is shining a spotlight on the areas they're avoiding in their own lives. And yes, that can be painful. It stings when those who once cheered for you now question your direction. It cuts deep when they say you've changed, as if transformation were something to be ashamed of. But here's the truth. Change is proof that you're alive. A living tree keeps growing. And if your roots are going deeper, if your branches are stretching higher, then you are exactly where you need to be. Don't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Don't apologize for growing beyond the version of you that no longer fits. Even Jesus faced this. He walked a path that not everyone could follow. And just like him, when you're stepping into your purpose, not everyone will understand. When Jesus returned to his hometown, the people didn't celebrate his growth. They questioned it. "Isn't this the carpenter's son?" they asked. In other words, who does he think he is? They couldn't see past the version of him they used to know. His transformation unsettled them. His calling made them uncomfortable. They couldn't reconcile the boy from their memories with the man standing in front of them. And because of that mindset, he could perform only a few miracles there. Not because his power was limited, but because their faith was. They had already boxed him into their expectations. And maybe you're experiencing something similar. Some people in your life just can't accept who you're becoming. They've locked you into a version of yourself that no longer exists. They saw your wilderness, but they don't understand your path to the promised land. They remember your weakness, but your strength threatens their comfort. So instead of celebrating your growth, they back away. The calls stop. The support fades. They stop acknowledging the new you, not because you've done something wrong, but because your transformation challenges their stagnation. But hear this. Spiritual growth isn't meant to keep everything the same. It brings change, and that change naturally brings separation. God trims what no longer bears fruit. He clears away what can't thrive where you're going, not to hurt you, but to cleanse, to strengthen, to elevate you. You're being prepared for something greater, and not everyone can come along. Some relationships were only ever meant for a season. They were part of a chapter, not the entire book. As you walk in obedience and align your life with purpose, don't be surprised if the room starts to feel quieter. That stillness isn't loneliness, it's sacred space. It's God making room for what's next. So don't take it to heart when people disappear. Don't let their absence cause you to question your direction. Instead, let it affirm your path. Because when the light within you begins to shine brighter, it naturally drives away the shadows. When your spirit grows deeper, shallow talk won't satisfy you anymore. And when your heart begins to crave righteousness, the need for worldly approval simply fades. You weren't created to remain stuck in one place. You weren't designed to simply blend into the background or conform to the expectations of others. You were made to grow, to stretch beyond the familiar, and to rise into everything God has called you to be. And sometimes, growth requires separation. If that means walking alone for a season, walk boldly. Walk with assurance, knowing you're never truly alone. Because when you walk in truth, God walks with you. He strengthens those who follow his path, even when that path isn't trendy, comfortable, or easy. So when someone starts pulling away or ignoring you, pause and ask yourself, not what's wrong with me, but what's shifting inside of me. Could it be that your spirit is maturing and no longer aligns with who they used to know? If so, thank God. Thank him for the growth, for the new awareness, for revealing what's temporary and what's eternal. Because spiritual maturity will always come with a price. But what you gain, peace, purpose, and the presence of God, is worth more than whatever you lose along the way. There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than any words ever could. You can feel the difference when someone you once spoke to every day begins to fade. Their replies become brief. The warmth in their voice begins to disappear. And before long, all that remains is a quiet void where connection used to live. In those moments, it's tempting to chase after them, to try to explain yourself, to repair what now feels broken. But sometimes that silence is not meant to harm you. It's there to protect you. Sometimes being ignored is actually the answer to a prayer you didn't even know how to put into words. Not every absence is a loss. Some absences are blessings, hidden in pain, wrapped in discomfort, but blessings nonetheless. Because when people begin to disappear from your life without explanation, when their support goes silent or their presence fades, it may be God stepping in to do what you wouldn't. He sees what you cannot see. He hears the conversations spoken in secret. He knows the intentions behind the smiles and the truth behind the praise. Even when their words appear loyal and their actions seem kind, God discerns what's hidden deep within the heart. And sometimes, in His mercy, He permits separation, not to punish you, but to preserve your peace, to protect your calling, to purify your path. Many of us have prayed heartfelt prayers like, "Lord, protect me. Keep me from harm. Show me the path you want me to take." But when the answer finally comes, we don't always recognize it. We expect closed doors to feel gentle, for relationships to end with kindness, for people to leave our lives with maturity, clarity, and grace. But real life? It's rarely that tidy. Sometimes people leave in silence. Sometimes they leave abruptly, without reason, without closure. And when they do, it hurts. It leaves us questioning. Yet even in that confusion, even in the ache that follows, something deeper is happening beneath the surface. God is doing a protective work in your life. He's safeguarding your future by removing what might quietly sabotage your calling. Think of it this way. You don't always notice a storm brewing until the clouds roll in. You don't always see the decay until it's already begun to weaken the structure. In the same way, there are things and people that seem harmless until they begin to erode the foundation God is building in you. So when someone suddenly grows distant, when they go quiet, when they step away without warning, don't rush to fix it. Don't chase after explanations. Pause, take a breath, pray, and ask God if, just maybe, this silence is His hand at work, shielding you from something your eyes weren't meant to see yet. Because sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from enemies. They come from people you trusted. And some of the biggest distractions, they often wear the mask of support. God, in His perfect wisdom, sometimes removes people, not because they're inherently bad, but because they simply can't go where you're going. You've been praying for peace, for purpose, for divine direction. And God knows exactly what needs to be cleared out for that peace to take root. He knows which voices need to fade, which attachments need to loosen, so you can finally hear Him more clearly. And yes, it stings. Rejection always leaves a mark. Silence makes you question your value. It tempts you to replay conversations, to overanalyze your every move, to ask, what did I do wrong? But here's what you need to hold on to. Your worth is not defined by who chooses to stay. Your identity is not anchored in human approval. If someone can walk out of your life without a word, without care, without clarity, then maybe that silence was the answer you prayed for. And in that clarity, you'll find freedom. Because anyone who can so easily ignore your heart was never meant to carry your trust. Think about it. If someone can turn away in your vulnerable moments, if they can silence themselves when your soul is speaking, then their presence was never rooted in purpose. Even Jesus experienced this. He knew what it felt like to be ignored by those closest to Him. In His hour of greatest need, when He asked His disciples to stay awake and pray with Him, they fell asleep. When He was arrested, they scattered. And Peter, the one who boldly vowed never to leave, denied Him not once, but 3 times. But did Jesus go after them? Did He plead for their loyalty or try to convince them to come back? No, He stayed focused. He kept His eyes on the cross. Because He understood a deep truth. Sometimes silence isn't abandonment. It's a sacred invitation to lean in and listen for the Father's voice. You have to learn to sit in that silence, not with resentment, not with bitterness, but with intention. Let it become your teacher. Let it guide you closer to God, not away. Let it strengthen your spirit instead of wounding your heart. Let it be the fire that refines your discernment, showing you who's really for you and who is just passing through. You don't need a massive crowd to walk out your calling. What you need is clarity. What you need is truth. And sometimes that clarity comes not through words, but through the absence of them. Because when someone chooses to ignore you, they're also revealing who they are. They're telling you, without saying a thing, how limited their capacity is to handle your truth, your healing, your growth. The hard truth is, some people only loved the broken version of you, the one who leaned on them, who needed their reassurance, who waited for their validation. But the moment you stood up straighter, the moment you stopped begging for attention, the moment your spirit began to heal, they quietly stepped away. But don't grieve that too long, because you didn't really lose them. You found yourself. So let them go. Let the silence fall where it may. And in that stillness, listen, not to fear, not to doubt, not to the echo of insecurity, but to the still, steady voice of God. He speaks loudest when the world goes quiet. He comforts deepest when the crowd disappears. And he draws closest when everyone else walks away. If you listen closely, you'll hear him say, "I've got you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm leading you to something better." That's what God whispers in the silence. So don't be afraid of it. Don't resent the ones who walked away without explanation. Instead, thank God for the protection you didn't understand at first. What often feels like rejection is, more times than not, divine preservation in disguise. When someone suddenly begins to ignore you, when their warmth fades without a word, when their place in your life starts to dissolve into absence, you're left with lingering questions that cut straight to the soul. What did I do wrong? Why did they change? Was I not enough? These thoughts echo loudly. But the truth is, sometimes it has nothing to do with a mistake on your part. Sometimes, people pull away not because of your flaws, but because of your light. Yes, your growth, your peace, your consistency. It reveals something in them they're not ready to face. You may not see it right away, but your life sends a message. The way you choose truth over comfort, peace over chaos, and integrity over shortcuts, it radiates. And while that light can uplift and inspire, it can also make others uncomfortable. Not because you've harmed them, but because your presence becomes a mirror to the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. Your strength makes their stagnation harder to ignore. Your faith stirs up their doubt. Your healing highlights the wounds they've kept buried. And rather than confront their own inner work, many choose the easier way out: silence, distance, withdrawal. It's not your fault, but it still hurts. It hurts when those you welcomed into your heart quietly disappear. When the people you once leaned on choose absence over honesty. But even in that pain, don't let their silence you. Don't let their fading presence cause you to question your worth or dim your shine. Because most of the time, what you're facing isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of transformation. You're not the same. You've changed. And change unsettles those who are content with standing still. People are naturally drawn to the familiar. So when your priorities evolve, when your walk with God becomes deeper, when your spirit matures, not everyone will come along for the journey. And that's okay. And that's not something to grieve. It's something to understand. You're not being punished. You're being refined. God isn't trying to wound you with separation. He's using it to shape you. He's not making you bitter. He's building you better. Through the silence, the distance, the unanswered calls, he's showing you something vital. Who is truly aligned with your future and who is only meant to walk with you through the past. So when someone walks away without closure, when they ignore your efforts to connect, it's not always personal. It's not always betrayal. More often, it's a revelation. Their silence unmasks their heart. It uncovers their priorities. And it signals something simple, yet profound. The season you shared is over. You see, we often pray for discernment, for direction, for divine alignment. We ask God to lead us toward his will. But when the answer comes in the form of someone leaving, we resist it. We cling to the familiar, even when God is clearly calling us to release it. We mourn what he's trying to prune. We hold tight to what he's trying to remove. But if we could see with his eyes, if we understood the fullness of what lies ahead, we would realize why certain people simply can't go with us. Their silence isn't just a human decision. It's divine permission. It's God saying, let be. Let them go. I'm making space for something greater. Even Jesus experienced this. Crowds gathered around him. Not because they truly believed, but because they were drawn to the miracles, the excitement, the blessings. But when he began speaking truth, truth that pierced the heart, truth that demanded change, they turned away. They stopped following, not because he failed them, but because his words revealed what they weren't ready to confront. And then he turned to the 12 and asked, "Will you also leave?" And Peter responded with a truth that still echoes today. "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." You see, some people leave when truth enters the room. They walk away because your growth shines a light on what they're not ready to face. But others stay. They're not intimidated by your transformation. They're not offended by your healing. They recognize something deeper, and they rejoice in it. But those who can't face what your life now reveals will eventually slip away. They may disappear without warning, without closure, leaving you puzzled and hurt. It won't make sense at first. You'll wonder what changed, what went wrong. It won't feel fair, especially when all you did was grow. But give it time, because one day, you'll look back and realize it was a blessing in disguise. You'll thank God for the separation, for the silence, for the ones who didn't stay. You'll see how every unanswered call, every closed door, every sudden distance wasn't just a loss. It was movement towards something sacred. Because you were never meant to chase people who are still running from their own reflection. You were never called to shrink so others feel comfortable. You can't afford to dim the light God placed in you just to fit into places He's already called you out of. Don't dilute your purpose for the sake of acceptance. Stand firm in who you are. Stay faithful to your calling. Keep stretching, keep shining, and trust that God will align you with the right people. Those who walk in the same direction, who won't fear your growth but will nurture it. There are people out there who won't be threatened by your transformation, but moved by it. They won't compete with your light. They'll celebrate it. They won't retreat when you rise. They'll rise with you. So the next time someone ignores you, when their silence echoes through your heart like a question with no answer, don't panic. Don't shrink. Don't begin to doubt your worth or your direction. Instead, let their silence become a witness to the power of your presence. Let it testify to what your life has become. A light, a mirror, a reminder of what's possible. Because you're not walking this road to be accepted by the crowd. You're walking it to be faithful to the call. You're not striving for popularity, you're seeking purity. And if that means walking alone for a season, then walk confidently, knowing you're never truly alone. The one who walks beside you is constant. He sees you. He supports you. He will never leave you, never forsake you, and never ignore you. So let their silence be your sign, not of rejection, but of divine redirection. Wishing you strength, peace, and clarity as you grow. May you be surrounded by love, purpose, and joy. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mindset Daily, for more content that inspires and uplifts.